Today we're going to look at the multiplication of rational numbers, which means the multiplication of fractions. We're not doing decimals, this happens to be fractions. Here's our first example. We have 3/4 times a negative 7/9. The first step that you're always going to do is to rename any mixed numbers as an improper fraction. You cannot multiply with mixed numbers. We do not have any mixed numbers in this case, so we just still have 3/4 times a negative 7/9. Our next step is to look to simplify before we multiply, which makes our life a lot easier and helps us deal with smaller numbers. To do that, you look at a numerator and denominator and see if there's a pair where you can divide both by the same number. 3 and 9 are both divisible by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So that's when we simplify it, it's going to be 1/4 times a negative 7/3. The next step is we're ready to multiply. So now we multiply across the numerator. 1 times 7 equals 7, and 4 times 3 equals 12. So our final answer is 7/12. So it's not quite our final answer, but we are done multiplying. Next we look to simplify it, and 7/12 is already the simplest form, but then we have to look back at how many negatives that we have. In the original problem, we had one negative. When we multiply with one negative, our final answer is negative. So it's a negative 7/12. In this example, you will see that we have mixed numbers. So we have to rename them or rewrite them as improper fractions first. To do that, we take the denominator and multiply it times the whole number. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 1 would be 7, and we keep the denominator, so that would be 7/3. 7 times 4 is 4. 7 times 2, is 14. Plus 5 is 19. We keep the denominator, and that would be 7. So we have 7/3 times 19 sevenths. Now we're left to see if we can cross-cancel anything to make our life easier. With this numerator and denominator pair here, both of these numbers are divisible by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 7 divided by 7 is 1. That leaves us 1/3 times 19 first. Now we're ready to multiply across. 1 times 19 is 19. 3 times 1 is 3, so we have 19/3. Now to simplify it, that means 19 divided by 3. 19 divided by 3 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. Subtract and get 1. So we have 6 and 1/3. When we put that into a mixed number to simplify it. We go back to look for any negatives. Both numbers begin as positive, so our final answer is a positive 6 and 1/3. In this example, we start out with mixed numbers, so we'll have to do the first step, which is to rename them. Again, we go 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 is 11, so that would be 11, 6, keep the denominator, and that was a negative number. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 1 is 36, keep the sevenths. So we have a negative 11 sixths and 36 sevenths. Now we're going to look for anything that we can cross-cancel. Both 6 and 36 are divisible by 6. So when we divide both of those numbers by 6, 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 36 divided by 6 is 6. So now we're going to multiply across. We have a negative 11 first times 6 sevenths. 11 times 6 is 66. 1 times 7 is 7. Now we are ready to simplify it. 66 divided by 7, we can get 9 groups. 9 times 7 is 63. We subtract, we get 3, so we know it's 3/7 as our leftovers fraction. We go back to count our negatives. There was one negative, so our final answer is going to be a negative 9 3/7. We can also multiply with 3 factors. 1/2 times 6/7 times a negative 4/9. There are no mixed numbers, so we can go on to the next step where we try to see if we can cross-cancel any. Here we see that the 6 and the 9, we'll start with the 2 and the 4. This 2 and this 4, they're both divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. We can also do the 6 and the 9. Both 6 and 9 are divisible by 3. And 6 divided by 3 is 2. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. It's a lot of crossing out there, but it's going to make our life easier. Now we're going to multiply across. So we have 1 over 1, 2 sevenths, and a negative 2 thirds. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4 for our numerator. 1 times 7 is 7. 7 times 3 is 21. That gives us 4 21sts. We go back and look. We'll see that there's one negative from the 3 factors. So our final answer has to be a negative 4 21sts. When we're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, the whole number you can write as a fraction by just putting it over the number 1. So negative 6 sevenths is the same thing as negative 6 sevenths times 3 divided by 1, or over 1. We look to see if we can cross cancel any to make our lives easier. 6 and 1, 3 and 7, neither pair can be cross canceled. So now we're ready to multiply across. 6 times 3 is 18. 7 times 1 is 7. That gives us 18 sevenths. 18 divided by 7 is 2. When you subtract, that gives you 4 sevenths. 2 and 4 sevenths. And we rewrite it as a mixed number. We look back, there was one negative, so our final answer is going to be a negative 2 and 4 sevenths. Let's move this on to what looks like algebra with variables. Here we have 3x divided by 5 times 4 sixths. There are no mixed numbers, so we can skip the first step. Now we look, again, we're doing the same thing. Here I see a 3 and a 6. Both of those numbers are divisible by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that gives me a 1x divided by 5 times 4 halves. Now I'm ready to multiply across. Well, the 1 in front of the x becomes an invisible 1, or if you want to leave the 1 there. You can do 1 times 4, which is 4, times the unknown number of x. So we write that as 4x. And 5 times 2 is 10. So we have 4x divided by 10. We can simplify this because the 4 and 10 are divisible by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So in our final answer, we have 2x divided by 5. The x was the unknown number, and it just stays there. We don't do anything with it because we don't know what it is. And that we do not have any negatives. They both numbers are positive, so our final answer is 2x divided by 5, or 2x fifths. Okay, let's look what happens when we have multiple variables. First of all, we do not have any mixed numbers, so we can move on. Cross-canceling, and when you look at this carefully, first we're going to look at the numbers. We have a 2 and we have an 8. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now, if you look up here, we have n squared. N squared means an unknown number times itself, n times n. In the denominator, we have n once. So that means this is a number divided by itself. So one of the n's up here, one of these unknown numbers, cancels out this one because it stands for the same unknown number. So if you have 6 divided by 6, 6 divided by 6 is 1, and that just cancels out. So when you have a variable and you have the same variable on the bottom, it can cancel each other out. But this one had 2 because it was n squared. So 1 gets canceled out, but 1 remains on top. So here's where we cross-cancel the 2 and the 8. And here's where we cross-cancel the n's, but that leaves one n on top. So now we're ready to multiply across. What we had was n divided by 3 times 5/4 after we did our cross-canceling. N times 5 is 5n. We always write the coefficient first and the variable second. And then 3 times 4 is 12. So the answer is 3n divided by 12, and that's already in its simplest form. This has been the multiplication of fractions.